Hello, everyone. Welcome back or welcome to our show. I am Darlene Hamilton of the Historical Tea and Dance Society, and that was Lindsay Verbal with impeccable timing on ending the recording just as our event is supposed to start. Lindsay, say hi. She's running things in the background. There she is. The wonderful Lindsay. And that beautiful piece of music was Heartland, tuned by Jonathan Jensen, played by the band Reunion, Daniel Dearbaum, Barbara Greenberg, and Jonathan Jensen from the CD Celebrations 20 English Country Dances of Orly Krasner. And I have posted the information, the credits for that in the chat boxes. That's an important thing to talk about. If you are joining us on Zoom, the way you can ask questions is by opening up your chat box. It's usually down at the bottom. And type your questions in there. If you're on Facebook, again, type your questions in the chat box. And Lindsay will be monitoring all those questions and bringing them to us as they fit in. If we don't get to yours right away, don't worry. We will do our best to get to it at some point in time during the web chat or during the after talk as it fits in best. So, all right, stick around for the after talk because that is where we get to get a little more personal and face-to-face and ask Orly questions directly, and a lot more fun conversation ensues. If you signed up for our Zoom web chat, then you have already received the link for the after talk. And if not, if you are one of our Historical Tea and Dance friends, you will find the link posted on that page. So, phew. I want to also give one more time a shout out to Karen Axelrod for that gorgeous concert that she does on Facebook every week. 2 hours before this show. It's called Not a Concert, and please, if you haven't tuned into that, you're missing out, so make sure you do. So thank you, Karen. We love you, and we're hoping to have you on one of these days. I think people would like that. All right, without further ado, let me go into a biography about Orly. She teaches at the Country Dance New York and Country Dancers of Westchester. She apprenticed as a dance teacher under Fritz Dimmertz Herman, Paul Ross, Beverly Francis, and Jean Morrow. She has taught in Japan, in England, throughout the USA and Canada. Her book of dances and CD, Celebrations, we will definitely be chatting about later. And in real life, Orly holds a PhD in musicology, and when she isn't dancing, she teaches music history and theory at City College of New York. So without further ado, let us bring up Orly Krasner. Say hello. Hopefully she's there with us. Are you there, Orly?
Do I unmute? Oh, I guess I have to unstart my own video. There we go. Yes, I am here. Hello. Me and technology don't get along that well, so I'm apologizing now if my wonky internet necessitates fancy permutations on your end. Hello, everybody.
Well, hopefully we'll do just fine. And we have a couple of things that we can put in if we have a few little moments of glitches.
Okay.
We've got a nice full hour of stuff to talk about.
Okay.
I'm going to jump right in. And because I love when I got the 5 things from Orly, they were called 5 things or 5 chapter titles in the autobiography of Orly Krasner. So what I did for the first time, and people are probably going to say, finally, here's thing 1, because the titles were so great. All right. So Orly, let's talk about Me a Dancer, You Must Be Joking.
Well, every once in a while, someone says something and says, oh, you're a dancer. And I think, on what planet do I call myself a dancer? Musicologist, musician, lots of things, but I don't think of myself as a dancer because I don't connect to my body the way lots of people who really are dancers do. I don't move like one. I don't think my posture is particularly good. at least not if you ever asked my mother when I was growing up. So I don't think of myself as a dancer. And had someone, oh, I don't know, some 25 years ago said to me, my crystal ball says that someday you will be known as a dancer, I would have said, honey, your crystal ball has a serious crack in it. You need a new one. No way, am I going to suddenly become a dancer. And it wasn't until about 1994 when I was in what I call the death agonies of the dissertation that I started doing dancing on a regular basis. Before that, I had a stint trying Hungarian dancing. I had a stint doing Israeli dancing, but this was all stuff I did as a kid. And then there was the year of ballet that I had when I was 5. And you have a 1 in 3 chance of figuring out which one is me. This is taken from home movies that my dad took at my end of the year recital when we literally got out there and towed the line. And family legend has it that somewhere in the middle of this performance, my mother turned to my dad and said, something, maybe we'd better give her piano lessons. And that was basically the end of my dancing until all those years later, when I was working on the dissertation and was thinking, I really have to do something to get out of my head and in motion, because otherwise I'm just going to look like a house. Because every night, time to start writing, where's the plate of cookies? Where's the bowl of popcorn? Where's the something? And I said, this is not good. So I started doing Hungarian dancing. A friend of mine said, you're going to love this. You're going to love the music. And the music was great. I loved it. And the dancing was hard. It reminded me of playing tennis. You have to work with someone who's substantially better than you are, or you don't make any progress. I hit the ball, you chase the ball, you hit the ball, I chase the ball. That's not tennis. And that was kind of the way I was with Hungarian couple dancing. It's like, which foot goes where? I do what? Huh? What? It was not happening. And just at the point I was saying, all right, I've got to stop this, got to find something else to do. Leslie Lassiter and I were talking. Now, Leslie and I knew each other first from our work together as graduate students in musicology. She said, you love doing the social dancing at the American music conferences. I know where to do this in New York now. Why don't you come try this? And I'm like, well, me and dancing, and it was like, but you're gonna love this. Come try it. And it was a really horrifically snowy winter. And I said, okay, if you're going to the dance tonight, then I'll go. And she said, okay, if you're going, then I'll go. And subways were running, we went. And I suspect it was probably a contra dance that night. And I gave myself permission to be an absolute disaster at this. It's a wallflower. You will survive. It's not junior high school. It'll be okay. You don't have to be any good at this. And gee, people actually asked me how to dance. I mean, not how to dance, but asked me if I wanted to dance. And when I said, well, yes, but I'm a beginner, they said, that's okay. It's like, okay. And I'd go one way and they'd go the other way. And I'd go, wait a minute, where's my partner? And we'd get back together and it all turned out just fine. And I thought, gee, this was kind of fun. And of course, I loved the music. We had live music. It was great. So I kept doing this. Depending on how the dissertation writing was going any one day, it's like, well, I'll either show up to the contra dance or show up on Tuesday night. And I wasn't even at the beginning all that aware that English country dancing and contra dancing were two different things. If someone said, make a star, and they gave me their hand like this, I took it in a handshake grip. if they gave me their hand like this, I took it like this. Just kind of, I just assumed it was different people at the mic. They said slightly different things, and okay. And after that, I started choreographing and then became a caller, and now it's 20 something years down the pike, and I guess I'm a dancer.
That was great.
That was great.
Thank you, Orly. So that actually sort of leads right into thing number two, which is, let me see if got to do these right. There we go.
There
Thing
we go.
number two, community, the ties that bind, or how dancing saved my life. And you were just talking about community and what, you know,
Yeah. Being a graduate student in New York at a school that doesn't really have a campus makes for a very lonely existence. And after some time trying to make friends and trying to find a place that I could call home, I thought maybe it would happen in Hungarian dancing for a while, but of course, we've talked about that. So finding a place where I fit in, sort of with all my own weirdnesses and insecurities and everything else, I noticed, gee, at the end of an evening, people took their chair and folded it up and put it away. And people just kind of brought refreshments and put it out and spread things out, and things happened. There wasn't a lot of, come on, guys, will you help us clean up so we can all get out of here? Everybody just pitched in because that's what we do. And I can actually now say we, and boy, does that feel good. And I thought, I like this. People understand that if everybody does a little bit, nobody's stuck doing everything. So that was one thing that pulled me into the community right away. There was a generosity of spirit, and I found that this became generosity of money, of time, of expertise, of friendship, and that has not changed either in my own community or in all the other communities I've become part of or visited or anything else, that there's always this sense of, oh, sure, we can make that happen. Oh yeah, we can do that. We can solve this. There isn't anything that seems so monumental, except maybe quarantine, that we can't find a way around that. And even in quarantine, who were the first people to say, hey, we can support the musicians who are out of work. We'll find a way to make this happen so that community stays together. Yay, Darlene, yay, Lindsay. So that was one of the things that struck me right away about having a community to call mine, was this generosity in every way, shape, or form. The other thing I would have to say is that it's a safe space. Now, I know we talked about this a little bit with Brooke, I guess, last week, the notion of gender neutral communities with positional calling and creating a space where anybody can do anything or play any side of the line. And interestingly enough, I found that same sense of safety in New York in a gendered community. But it wasn't one, even though we still use gendered vocabulary in the English community, and we're alternating, I understand we're alternating certain weeks in the Contra community. There's been a stronger push there to change the speaking. But everybody came, everybody danced. It didn't matter what they were wearing. Guys came in a skirt, no problem, okay. Girls came dressed up or not dressed up or whatever, didn't matter. And for me, trying to find a community and maybe find some friends or more than that, the idea that I could flirt in this environment and it didn't mean a thing until it went off the dance floor was very refreshing. It's like, oh, I don't have to worry about actually looking at this guy in the eye because, and smiling, that was the important thing, and smiling because that's kind of what we do here and it doesn't matter. The fact that we could take hands four in a circle and hang on to the hands four as though we were four little kids on the playground and nobody thought, wait a minute, we're grown-ups and we're holding hands? This is just like too weird. And the answer was, yeah, it's not weird at all. We're just holding hands. It's like, wow, this is great. So I guess those are the things I've come to really treasure about finding a community. And I don't think I'm exaggerating too much when I say it saved my life because it gave me a place to be counted, to be seen, to be heard, to be known. And that's a real treasure.
That's that's a wonderful thing. Yes, and I think a lot of us can relate to that. So, thank you. Make a lot of good points. I
Oh,
remember.
can I actually? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just remembering in our conversation you had talked about how, if you weren't so good with small talk, it would, you could just start off and as
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I loved the way you said that. So that was very cool.
Well, when I was working on the dissertation, I found that I didn't have a lot of bandwidth for chatter. And I certainly didn't want to talk about my dissertation, which I know someone's going to ask, it was a study of the comic operas of Reginald de Koven, who was an American operatic composer, same vintage as Victor Herbert and John Philip Sousa. And yeah, that brings a conversation to a screeching halt every time. People would say, so how's it going? And it's like, fine, I don't want to talk about it. So what'd you do this week? I don't want to talk about it. They're like, cool. And we didn't talk about it, especially since I was a beginner and I needed to hear what was going on. And then over time, it's so what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a graduate student writing my dissertation. Oh, that's cool. And I don't want to talk about it. No problem. Over the weeks, it's like, oh, and what are you doing? Oh, that's really interesting. And it kind of opened up to the point that when I finally defended my dissertation, oh, I'd say it was probably a year and a half after I started dancing, somebody from the community who is now since gone said, oh, but I really want to come to your defense. I really want to be there. And it's like, well, they are technically open, but nobody ever goes to these things. He says, oh, but I really want to be there. So he was one of a handful of people and other friends who actually came to my doctoral defense just to cheer me on. So another example of generosity.
Wow, that's cool. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the global community because you have taught in Japan, you've taught in England, and I know people want to hear about that a bit.
Yeah. Well, my first venture to England actually came as a dancer. I hadn't been dancing all that long yet at this point. And here I have to put in my hello to Sharon Green, who's probably out there someplace. Sharon, who was still in New York at that point, had said that she was going to the Litchfield Folk Festival. And I said, oh, when is that? Blah, where is it? And turns out I was going to be in England at the same time, but I wasn't yet going to festivals even here, so I didn't really know much about them. But the place where I was staying was near Cecil Sharp House. I was there for a summer doing research, and I went to dances. And one afternoon at the interval, everyone was talking about Litchfield because it was coming up that weekend. And someone said, oh, you're going to Litchfield? And I said, well, I've heard of it, but I really don't know anything about it. And, how would I get there? And someone behind me turned around and said, oh, I couldn't help overhearing, but we have extra space in our car. We could give you a ride there. And I went, oh, this woman and I are now still friends. And then I said, but, where would I stay? And someone else said, oh, I just gave up my single at this B&B because my plans have changed. I can give you the name of the B&B and you can call them and take over my reservation. And, a few days later, I was packing up to go to Litchfield. And um, found out firsthand about the differences between the English dance scene and the US dance scene of 20 years ago. It's changed a bit since then. And made some connections there. One of whom is Charles Bolton, so I guess we'll talk about him later on.
Yes, we will.
But yeah, but trying to explain to people what this funny world is that we live in, this community, that I can just write to someone and say, hey, I'm thinking of going to the festival. Can you find me someplace to stay? And the person says, I think we can work that out. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And I get an email saying, yeah, so-and-so said they could put you up. They've got space. And coming home and talking to people saying, yeah, I wasn't planning to go to this, but this person just said, sure, you can come. Wait a minute. You just showed up at somebody's doorstep that you had never met before and you spent a weekend with them? It's like, yeah, well, we're all dancers, but they had never met you before. And like, isn't this, well, no, it's not weird. This is just the way things are in the dance community. So I'm sure other people have had similar experiences trying to explain to outsiders, what it is we do in this funny world of dancing, but there it is. And that same sense of generosity comes across even in a place like Japan. It's a little different. The whole Japanese social, the whole culture of dancing is different than English country dancing. But this same willingness to engage with someone you don't know just because you share this love for dancing, I truly think that's universal.
That's wonderful. That's yes. Somebody had asked what it was. Lindsay, do we have them on? Do you want to bring them up or?
Well, it was both Lisa Brown and Lucia Coulter asked the same question. They want to know what's it like to teach English country dancing in Japan.
Oh, wow. It's a little different than teaching here, in part because the culture is different. They don't really have English country dance clubs or contra dance clubs the way we do here. For them, English country dance is just one part of a larger folk dance world. So you might get one of this and one of those, and oh yeah, let's do an English country dance now as part of your weekly club. So when Jean Murrow and I went, we were actually teaching the folk dance teachers a set number of dances that they would then bring back to their clubs, and then they would teach it to the rank and file. So these were highly motivated dancers, dance teachers, who were willing to put up with all kinds of stuff to get past this language barrier. So Jean and I always taught with headset mics, and we're always teaching from the floor. We would say something, demo it, maybe demo it again. And then one of the dance teachers would be translating this. And of course, Jean and I, working very hard to reduce our words to the fewest possible, would say, first corner set and turn single. And then there'd be this barrage of Japanese, and we're thinking, what could they possibly be saying? We only used 10 words, but there was a lot of translating that needed to happen beyond the language itself to, well, what exactly does it mean to do a turn single? Even though we had demoed it, the Japanese teacher would then fill in some of those words. It's great. They're very attentive to everything. One of the things, well, this actually will lead us into thing number 3. Um, one of the dances we taught involved siding, plain old Cecil Sharp swirly siding. And we did this and dance went fine. And at the break, 3 or 4 people came up in a cluster, kind of pushing forward the one with the best English, who addressed Jean, Jean-san, because of course he was the senior teacher, said, we noticed when you were dancing that move that you started first with your right foot, and then coming back, you used your left foot. And Orly-san always used her right foot, which is correct. And Jean and I kind of looked at each other and burst out laughing because, of course, both of them are correct. I learned the move from Fried Hermann, who insisted this is how you do it. It's right, left, right together, right, left, right together. Jean learned that move as part of the Morris tradition, where it's always the outside leg. So it's right foot first, left foot on the way back. And of course, the Japanese were not happy to find out that either one was okay. They really wanted an answer. What is correct? But they noticed those kinds of details just by watching, which certainly amazed me, and I think Jean also.
Wow, that's cool. That's very cool. Thank you for telling
Yeah,
us about that. So,
it's great being here. I love it.
yeah, I'd love to experience it someday. Yeah.
And I
Um,
should have been packing right now to leave for tomorrow, but oh well.
uh, uh, yes. Well, let's
There's a future. We'll dance again.
we will. Yes, absolutely. So let's move on to thing number 3. And we're going to be bringing up a couple questions in a couple of minutes, I think.
Okay.
So, thing number 3 is I'm not wrong, you're wrong, or mistakes and what not to do about them.
Mistakes. Yeah, Lord knows I still keep making lots of them, but they've changed in the nature of the mistakes I make. So, unlike some people who have lots of ballet experience or Pilates experience or yoga experience, my idea of an exercise routine is I dance, I walk. That's about it. So I don't have this sense of how my body is supposed to move. It just does because, fortunately, most of the parts are in pretty good working order. Um, but this notion of moving gracefully, that's a little peculiar to me. Moving in time to music, that's no problem. Trained musician, I got that part down. But these other things took me a while to actually learn this idea that if I'm coming out of a right hand turn, the momentum leaves me wanting to go in a certain direction. So if the dance is constructed with some kind of logic or attention to this, then you keep going in the logical direction. Seems perfectly obvious, either to people who have been dancing a long time or people who understand physics, but that wasn't me. So quite often, certainly when I was starting, my partner would be down the set and I would have gone up the set because, cross and cast, I, nothing told me to go that way. So I just half the time went the other way. And fortunately, my partners were very good about getting me back with them without making a big to-do about this. So thank you to all my dance partners from way back when, many of whom are still my dance partners now. And that's great. What's more interesting, because it's come up a lot, I think in almost every one of these I've watched, has been, what do you do about mistakes? And what tends to happen in some communities is that a mistake is wrong. It means you've done something bad. And, oh no, that's a moment of great shame or whatever. And I'm sure that drives some newcomers away from the dance when they run into people who probably unwittingly make you feel um, like an idiot for not getting it. I mean, we do the same thing 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So making mistakes, yeah, you make a mistake, no big deal. It doesn't cause calamity. And if it does, well, there's another round and there's another dance and moving right along. What's more interesting and something I'm trying increasingly hard to get dancers to break is that the idea of, I'm not wrong, you're wrong. No, you're here. No, I should be there. And basically stopping to dance, often in a set dance, to fix something. No, you need to be there. You need to be there. It's like, just pick a spot and keep dancing, people. It doesn't matter. So it's like, okay, you can either stop and argue about it, or you can keep dancing. So trying to encourage people that a mistake is not the end of the world. It's not a question of who's right. Nobody's right. Recover. Recover gracefully if you can, without causing a kerfuffle. And it can actually be fun if you make a mistake. It's not, oh man, I made a mistake, I feel terrible. Yeah, all right, it's a dance, get on with it. I remember one instance where it was probably ball prep because the dance was reasonably complicated. And we had a lovely 4-couple set right up near, under the caller's nose, of course, which is always where this happens. And there were probably 3 or 4 or 5 of us who were callers, and certainly all of us were experienced, advanced dancers. And somebody went the wrong way or forgot their number or did something, and we all just, oops, took our new position and started dancing, and then something else went wrong. And we never stopped dancing. We were doing some other dance. I don't know, it wasn't what the caller was saying, because, we were all just in fits of giggles by the end of this, because we would change number and change gender and change side and change whatever just to keep this thing going. And we did, we kept it going, but it was wrong from the get-go. But one of my most fun experiences as a dancer. So trying to encourage people to have fun, even when things don't quite go as planned, great. When things go wrong as a caller, well, that's a little trickier. Then, of course, you've got to own up to it. It can be something as simple as, oh, did I forget to tell you this dance is improper? Or, oh, no, wait, I meant, 2-hand turn all the way, not halfway. You just own up to it and move along.
Speaking of calling, we have a couple of questions that people want to ask about calling,
okay.
And we'd like to bring up one of them, Lindsay.
Awesome. We have Paul Ross on the line right now. Paul, if you'd like to
Uh-oh.
turn on your camera and unmute your microphone, you're welcome to.
Hello, Orly. Orly, you're a great storyteller, Orly. This is really fun.
Thank you. We should be dancing at CDNY tonight.
You are so right. Speaking of CDW, I recall a time when you and I were planning a ball together, and you said something that has stuck with me. You said, we really need to plan the ball for the dancers that we have. I thought that was a very interesting insight, and I wonder if you'd like to elaborate that, since you've been working with dancers that we have over all these years.
Wow. Good question. Tricky question, because planning for the dancers you have is true for everybody and not just at a ball level. So backing up a little bit, for a typical club night, you know, a Tuesday in New York or a Thursday in White Plains, you know, these are dancers I know, they're communities I've been part of for a long time. So I have a pretty good idea what the dancers are capable of. You think, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to call this as my challenging dance. And you've got it all worked out. And then, gee whiz, 12 new dancers come because it's somebody's birthday and they thought, wouldn't it be fun to go dancing? Yeah, great. So there's reprogramming on the fly. And sometimes you just have to let it go, and there it is. Sometimes you think, oh, I really want to call this dance. I've just learned it. It's fabulous. I've fallen in love with it. I'm going to teach it. And you go, oh, the numbers are just not right for a 4-couple set. So do I push it through, or do I, well, hopefully I've planned an alternate that accounts for vagaries of numbers, because certainly with smaller groups that happens, and sometimes you've got to run with that. Sometimes you say, okay, I'm going to program this really challenging dance, and I'm going to hope that all of the experienced dancers come that night. But in case they don't, well, I've got something else in the same mood or the same meter and key. And if it's not looking good, or if I just get too tired to pull it off, I'll just do this one instead. So it's a lot of planning. For a ball, there's the additional question of, do you program for the dancers who come every week, who might only be 25, 30, 40, 50% of the number of dancers who are coming to your ball? So finding a level that's the sweet spot for the dancers you've got and their capabilities, limitations, which might be experience limitations. As our population ages, there are physical limitations. You know, I love doing the First Lady, but if you can't skip all of those figures of 8, is this the best dance to program? Well, yeah, we could probably take the tempo slower and get through it, but so you have to think, what will be an invigorating experience for everybody, and allow people to work with their limitations. So that's another layer to all of this. And of course, where we're going to be when all of this is over, and what we actually remember, and how limber we still are, I don't know. Live long and prosper, and we'll see what we can come up with. I don't know.
Thank you, Orly.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
We have one more question. Thank you, Paul.
We do. Arlene and David, if you would like to, you can turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Do have them on the line here.
Okay, great. Thank you. So question for callers, if you had one bit of special advice that you've learned over the years that you would like to share with a caller early in their career rather than later, what would that be?
Wow, it's a great question. For early on, and I think for all of us, the fewest possible number of words is generally the best way to go. And of course, we all say that, and I like to attribute that to Bruce Hamilton. Hi, Bruce, you're probably out there someplace. But something I learned from Paul Ross that I've used more and more and more, and I think a lot of us have to start doing more and more, is not just the fewest number of words, but parsing the words and spacing them out. Because a lot of our dancers are now of an age that there are hearing issues. And even with hearing aids, saying something like once cross and go below takes longer to process than ones cross and go below. Or as some communities would say, cross and cast. Same thing. Taking all of those words and stringing them together is a lot harder to grab, especially if you've got a hearing issue, than ones, oh, me, cross, and go below. So that kind of spacing of the words, I think it's a great habit to get into, because now, even if I'm in a room full of youngsters, I just do that as a matter of course, and people just say, oh, wow, that was really clear, as opposed to, I'm listening really hard. So I'd say that was a great tip. Thank you, Paul.
I love that. And you're training a new generation to call in such a clear manner. So that's wonderful.
So that when I'm old and have hearing issues, I'll know what I'm doing.
Thank you, Arlene. I am going to move us along because time moves along. Thank you so much for asking that question. We're going to go into thing number 4. You all will like this. People I have known. Free and Charles Bolton. There we go.
Thanks. So these are two people who have had a tremendous influence on me in a lot of ways. Friet de Metz Herman was actively teaching in Westchester and New York when I was just learning. And this is a picture, I don't know, Paul, whether you took this or found this, but he posted it to the Country Dancers of Westchester website, and I just pulled it from there to send it along. Most of us who knew Friet more recently think of her as that crotchety old lady who was often in a wheelchair at the mic. And yeah, she was that at the end of her days because she was in a lot of pain. And pain makes people crotchety. I've discovered that when I had my, after I broke my wrist, I was a pretty cranky git. So I wanted to show Friet in her glory days. And Friet was no nonsense at the mic. Not always the best at teaching something, but she knew what she wanted. And she was not going to stop until she got there, which is one reason I think she and Andrew Shaw got along so well, because there's this same attention to detail. But boy, does she scare me. She still does, and that's in spite of, I don't know if people can see this bracelet. I'm wearing my Friet bracelet today. It was a present from Pat Shaw to Friet, and then from Friet to me. And I think it might be what she's wearing on her wrist in that photo we posted. So I think of this as my bracelet of authority when I'm calling. It reminds me to not let sloppy dancing go unnoticed. So Friet would be very particular. She was born in 1926 in the Netherlands, lived through the war, which of course had concomitant health issues. And she passed away in 2010. I don't know how many numbers of books, easily, 8 or thereabouts, including Serendipity, her last big collection, which I think is still available, CVSS, I would assume, and if not, check in with Paul, he can tell you. And Ease and Elegance, which has just been reprinted, and new callers especially should make sure to get a hold of that, because her front matter for that is filled with wonderful information about what to do and how to program and, all of that stuff. Other people have talked about Friet and her connection to Pat Shaw. So for me, especially as a choreographer now, I feel as though I'm part of the tradition. I studied with Friet, who worked with Pat Shaw, who goes back to Cecil Sharp, who goes back to Henry Playford, and with a few years in between. So there's this marvelous sense for me of feeling like I'm part of this continuum and this continuity. But interestingly enough, even though it was Freet in large measure who taught me how to dance with very specific things like right, left, right together, back starting on the right foot, right, left, right together. We never talked about choreography, she and I. I learned what she thought about dances mostly by sitting on the sidelines when I would sit out with her and watch somebody else's dance, or even her dance, the comments she would make on it. Well, yes, that's all very good, but it's very walky-walky. It's like, well, what do you mean, Freet? Well, all you do is walk, or as most of us do when we're tired, we plod. You know, there's no skipping, there's no change of texture. It's like, oh, interesting. I have to think about this now as I do other dances. You know, oh yeah, this really is more fun if I'm not just, you know, kind of slogging through something. So those were the kinds of things I learned from her by sitting on the sidelines. Or she would, you know, snort in derision at something and say, well, that doesn't work, or that's not very good. And I'd say, well, why not? And she said, well, look at the dancers. And well, you know, what are you noticing that I'm not noticing? And she would point things out. So I learned how to look at a dance. So there were lots of things I learned from Freet that came about in indirect ways. My connection with Charles Bolton is a little bit more direct. And I think we've got a screenshot. There's Charles's entire oeuvre, both his reconstructions and his own dances, are now archived on the CDSS website. And that's the photo that he wanted there with his biography. Just for those who like, people who like dates, he was born in 1928 and passed away in 2016. He had gone to Sheffield University, found dancing and became reacquainted with it, you know, because the English all do dancing, you know, as part of their schooling. So I guess in college he had joined a Ramblers Club, you know, a walking group, and from there was sucked into dancing, and then met his wife that way. You know, Sheffield University, he was a French major, spent some time at the Sorbonne, and then taught French. And I want to say high school, but it might have been younger groups. I don't remember that. So Charles also studied Russian. So after a visit to Russia, he came home and wrote Moscow Nights, which uses the tune, let's see if I can say this, Podmoskovnya Veshara, which means, you know, nights, you know, evenings in Moscow, or night, you know, nighttime in Moscow. He coached me on how to say that, and I'm sure I'm making a hash of it, but, you know, somebody can fix that the way they fix my Dutch. And I met Charles the first time I went to Litchfield, to the folk festival. And at that point, I hadn't been dancing very long. You know, he said, hi, I'm Charles, you know, I'm Orly, and we danced. And, you know, we then stayed in touch over the years, first with letters and then with email. And in 2001, when I was chair of the New York Ball, I invited Charles, or convinced the committee to let me invite Charles, because we don't have outside callers at our ball typically. But he was coming to call at NEFA, and I said, look, he's going to be here anyway. It's the week before after. Let's get Charles to call the ball. So if you want to pop that photo back up, there's me on the right with the big floofy hat, which has a story I'll tell you some other day. There's Charles in the middle, and Beverly Francis on the left-hand side. So Beverly was the in-house caller, and we always call in pairs at the New York Ball, and she was working with Charles Bolton that year. So I'm rather fond of this picture, for all that it's a little fuzzy and my eyes are closed, and, you know, it was the end of a long evening, but there we are. what was wonderful about Charles, aside from, him being just a perfectly lovely gentleman and gentle soul, was that there was this time lag between him living in the UK and me living here. So I was just starting to choreograph at that point, and I'd stay up all hours trying to work something out and tinkering and, drawing things with arrows, and I'd send him something, at 0 dark 30 and say, okay, this is as far as I can go. Does this work? And next morning, it would be later in the day for him, he would have answered my email and said, I'm really not sure what you're trying to have people do in the B2. And I'd say, well, the ones are coming down the outside, or casting down the outside and then leading back up to place, while the twos are leading up the inside and then casting behind them back down to their place. And he would write back and say, oh, you mean cast and lead, lead and cast? And I'd go, oh, is that what that's called? There were still a lot of very basic things about dancing I didn't know. And he was very gracious about helping me over some of those hurdles. Another one, he wrote back and said, well, you do realize that at the end of the dance, you have, everybody doing a two-hand turn, which leaves the first lady wanting to go in that direction. But at the beginning of the dance, you want her to go in this direction. And I'd look at that and go, oh, yeah, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. There's physics again. Yeah, I guess I really do want to keep going that way, but I now have to go, I guess I better fix that, hadn't I? So I learned lots and lots and lots of things from Charles. And one of my favorite dances of mine is Evergreen, which I wrote as a birthday present for Charles. Figuring out which day exactly was his birthday is another story. But it was the first dance I wrote that he didn't literally hold my hand through each step of the way. It's like, I did this all by myself. Here it is. I was very proud of that.
It sounds like you had a wonderful mentor in him. And we do have a couple more things that we're going to show, but we're going to show them in the after talk because we are starting to the end.
I'm dabbling too much.
It's great. Yeah. We love it. I'm sure everybody would say the same thing. We do want to keep talking, and more will come up in the after talk.
To entice people to stick around, there is a connection between Freet and Charles, and I will talk about that later.
And the good thing is the conversation about Charles is leading right into thing number 5, which is choreography,
yeah.
Or why I no longer do counted cross stitch.
Yeah, once upon a time I used to do counted cross stitch, and when I started working on dances, I think that the same part of my brain that was dealing with patterns and counting and X's and O's just kind of went bye-bye. So that was it for counted cross stitch. But I do everything out on paper. I've got little X's and O's, X1 is first man, 01 or 01 is first lady. And, I draw arrows now to indicate where the line of momentum is so I don't screw up. But one of the things I inherited from Charles, I will show this. This is how Charles worked out those things. I don't know if that's visible to everybody. Charles used red and black checkers, which he labeled with numbers. So there's, I don't know whether I suspect he used the red for the women and the black pieces for the men. But there's, a 1 and a 1, a 2 and a 2, all the way up through 6. So he could work out 6 couples with his checkers. And I sometimes, keep them close if I need inspiration, if I need to channel him. But
That's very
choreography,
cool. We're going to, yes, and it's wonderful. We're going to show your book and your CD.
oh
Just
yes,
here we get those into the web chat.
yep, yep. I did finally have enough things that I felt good about sending them out there. So the CD has Reunion, which is Dan Beerbaum, Barbara Greenberg, and Jonathan Jensen. And a few tracks Gene Murrow sat in on with recorder and concertina. And there are 15 things on the recording, but 20 dances in the book, unless you count the fact that Evergreen has 2 versions, which makes it 21. And the cover for this is actually a photo that a great aunt of mine took. It's called Arizona Sunrise, I think. And then she would play around with it at the beginning of computer graphics. And a shout out to Ralph Canapa and Nikki Herbst for doing all the design work for the CD and the book. I'm very happy with the work they did. So that's the CD cover. And so the book should come up next. Yep, there's the book. So you can see it's got 20 in there. And there's my dance planner. So it's sort of the table of contents. You can see it's got When Laura Smiles in there, Heartland, which I wrote for Nikki. That was the intro music. One of those is the very first dance I ever wrote, but I'm not going to tell you which one it is. So people have always said to me, well, actually the first thing is, so why did I start choreography? And the joke here is that right around the time I started doing this, Colin Hume had spent a year in the States and was calling in New York a lot. And he was writing dances for a lot of people in New York that I knew. And I thought, boy, it's going to be a cold day in hell before anybody ever writes a dance for me. So I guess I'm just going to have to start writing my own. So some years later, Colin wrote a dance for me, hoping that maybe he'd get me to stop writing. And he called it The Bribe, B-R-I-B-E, not D-E, bribe. The idea being that he was bribing me to stop writing. But as he put it, he figured it was too late at that point. So I started writing mostly not as an exercise for me, but as a way to celebrate the things that were important to me in the community, the people in the community. So it may have started a bit like an exercise, can I do this? But one of the other early dances I wrote was When Laura Smiles, which was written as an engagement present for 2 new dancers in our community then. They now have 1 young son. I forgot whether there's a second child there, but they have youngsters. So I run into them periodically and they're still together and still dancing. No, still not dancing, but they hope to come back to it. That's what the kink was. Yeah, they hope to come back to it eventually. So I think of them whenever I call When Laura Smiles.
I'm going to stop you here. I'm so sorry. But I can see that a lot of the after chat is going to be talking about choreography. There are some great stories. Trust me, you want to come into the after chat and hear the rest. People that are watching this later are going to say, darn it, why wasn't I there?
Well, you're going to have to invite me to come to your community if you want to hear my stories.
There you go. That sounds good to me. I'm going to ask what your favorite dance is.
Oh, I would have to say St. Margaret's Hill. If that dance, if I'm on my deathbed and that dance is, I hear that tune, if I don't get up and start dancing, or I ever say, oh, I'm too tired to dance this, I'm really seriously, out of sorts, because I just adore that. I love the way the lines shift from up and down to across the hall. And it took years before I could do that dance, comfortably. It was always, oh, I love this dance. Oh, can you get me through this? I don't know this really well. So yeah, I would have to say St. Margaret's Hill. And I love the tune and everything about it.
That's a great dance. All right,
And
so
I'm a tea drinker.
we are going to say goodbye for now to you, but then we're all going to go into the after chat and we'll be able to get face to face, all up close and personal. And Orly will be happy to see all her friends and new friends out there in the audience. Let me do, let me let you say goodbye, and then I'm going to do some wrap up stuff.
Big thank you to everybody who wanted to hear my stories for the umpty scratch time, and those of you who thought, gee, what does she have to say? Bigger thanks to Darlene and Lindsay for putting together this brilliant series. What goes on behind the scenes is truly, truly amazing. They are so together in making this happen and keeping us all connected during the current stuff that, mwah,
Thank
big
you.
hug and kiss.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Let me do the closing stuff. Join us next week when we have David Millstone. We're very excited to have him. English country, contra dance, family dance caller, dance historian, documentarian, teacher, and more. So you'll have a lot of fun with that. We're going to close with the donation screen, as where Orly would suggest if you have, donations that you want to give, it'll be up there. It's on our website, or it will be tomorrow if it's not there right now. And the closing music is The Nine Tailors. It's a tune by Orly Krasner. It's played by the band Reunion. It's on the CD Celebrations 20 English Country Dances by Orly Krasner. And we will see you all in about 2 minutes or so in the after chat. Bye. Thank you for joining us.
All right, let me go get a sweater.